The future of businesses depends on their ability to adapt to the new normal and the pace at which they can leverage the power of emerging technologies like AI, IoT, AR and VR. After an overwhelming response to Day 1 of New Horizon presented by GE, the Day 2 of this mega virtual AI-focused summit was on the role of technology in tackling climate change. The primary focus was on renewable energy and cybersecurity. The day began with an opening address followed by an insightful interview with Larry Culp, Chairman and CEO, GE.
And I want to understand from you how you are viewing the recovery that we are currently seeing globally. You did say that momentum was building across your various business segments, from healthcare to services, and initial signs of recovery in aviation. Do you feel confident of being able to build on that?
Shireen, good to be with you, and thanks for the opportunity. I do think that we feel good about the overall recovery as we look across the GE portfolio today. Obviously, most eyes are on the recovery in aviation. We see global departures down, as of this morning, 26% versus the same time in 2019. But that said, we have seen a gradual return, particularly here in the US and parts of Europe as well, amongst the narrow-body fleet. That's good for the industry. That's good for our service business. Certainly, the broader trans-Pacific, transatlantic routes are slowly coming back. We see that in our wide-body activity. But I think we're optimistic given the pace and the momentum that we see building. Healthcare has been a business that has really been a standout for us through the course of this pandemic. We were hit early on as hospitals paused to care for those impacted by COVID-19, but we've certainly seen a modernization effort both in the private and the public sectors ever since. In renewables, everyone's focused on COP26 here in a matter of weeks, let alone the commitments that governments and companies have made to 2030 and 2050. We've seen significant interest in what we do both in our on and offshore wind businesses there, let alone in our grid infrastructure business.
This was followed by an insightful keynote address by the Union Minister, Mr. Bhupendra Yadav, for Environment, Forest and Climate Change.
हम जानते हैं कि जलवायु परिवर्तन के कारण विश्व का जो तापमान बढ़ने की जो संभावना बढ़ रही है, उसके कारण दुनिया एक नए संकट की ओर जा रही है। ये संकट ऐसा है जो सारी मानवता ही नहीं, पृथ्वी पर रहने वाली सारे जीव जंतु वनस्पति सबको चुनौती देने जा रहा है। ऐसे में दुनिया के सभी देशों की जिम्मेदारी है कि तकनीकी के इस दौर में हम उस नई तकनीकी को अपनाएं जो जलवायु परिवर्तन के इस दौर में विश्व में आने वाले जलवायु संकट के लिए सृजनात्मक हो, उसको विध्वंस करने वाली ना हो। और इसलिए CNBC 18 के इस संवाद के माध्यम से आज जिन नई विषयों पर चर्चा होगी, मुझे लगता है इस मंथन के बाद कुछ अच्छे विषय आएंगे। जहां तक भारत का सवाल है, भारत ने पेरिस एग्रीमेंट के बाद अपने जो NDCs हैं उनको प्राप्त करने में सफलता पाई है। भारत ने वैकल्पिक ऊर्जा में आज 37% निर्भरता प्राप्त कर ली है। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में भारत ने वैकल्पिक ऊर्जा का 2030 तक 450 गीगावाट का लक्ष्य भी तय किया है। इसके साथ ही अपने वन्य क्षेत्रों को बचाने के लिए, अपनी धरती को हरा भरा करने के लिए भारत सरकार के द्वारा एक बड़ी डेजर्टिफिकेशन को रोकने के लिए योजना भी चलाई जा रही है। हम अपनी प्रकृति, अपनी जैव विविधता, अपने वन्य प्राणी, अपने जीव जंतु, अपने पर्यावरण, अपने सुंदर समुद्र तटों को बचाने के लिए पूरी तरह प्रतिबद्ध है। और इसलिए भारत में अभी कुछ हमारे जो बीचेस हैं उनको अंतर्राष्ट्रीय मान्यता प्राप्त हुई है। हमारे जो कुछ 14 टाइगर रिजर्व्स हैं उनको मान्यता प्राप्त हुई है। भारत में कुछ अच्छी झीलों को रामासर के अंतर्गत मान्यता प्राप्त हुई है। हम सब इस धरती के ट्रस्टी हैं और इसलिए इस धरती का पे आने वाले समय की पीढ़ियों का जीवन सुरक्षित रहे, उसके लिए हम प्रतिबद्ध हैं।
Decarbonization is a very crucial topic in the coming decade, and the next discussion was on meeting India's climate goals with decarbonization technology. How do you think we are really moving towards meeting our climate goals, and what are the impediments that we are facing? Well, in terms of the Paris Agreement, of course, we had to keep the global warming temperatures to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So how far are we from there, and what are the barriers that we are facing?
Well, thank you. Look, overall, in order to limit the global temperature to 1.5 degrees centigrade, we have to get the whole world to a net zero economy, net zero greenhouse gases around mid-century. And I think a reasonable set of targets is all rich developed countries there by 2050, all developing countries there by 2060. And the good news is that we, broadly speaking, know the technologies which are going to do this. They are decarbonising the electricity system, primarily via renewables, also some other technologies. It's a big role for the electrification of the economy, electrifying road transport. It's a big role also for green hydrogen, which can enable us to decarbonize steel, decarbonize global shipping. So we sort of know the technologies. As for India, India is taking many of the steps in the right direction. There is the clear target, which Prime Minister Modi has reiterated, of 450 gigawatts of renewables by 2030. And if you put that together with other technologies, battery technologies, the emergence of hydrogen technologies, the work that we in the ETC have done with the Energy and Resources Institute of India at TERI makes us believe that it is absolutely possible for India by 2030 to be getting over 50% of its electricity from renewable sources.
India had announced its three, major targets in terms of, nationally determined, contribution, and one of them was actually, reducing carbon footprint by 33 to 35% in by 2030, and the other one was of 40% of electricity coming from renewable sources, and also additionally creating carbon sink, which could be 2.5 to 3 billion ton of carbon equivalent. So I think in these three directions India is progressing relatively good, and India has already crossed 100 megawatt in terms of 100 gigawatt in terms of renewable energy, and 2030 target of 450 megawatt is actually not really far as and wide. So I think it is doing pretty well, and by 2022 the target of 175 is also quite clearly to be achieved.
We came with a revised target of 175 gigawatt by 2022 and now 450 by 2030. So these are the top line numbers, and I think this is a very, very aggressive plan that the government has. But having said that, I think government has taken a number of steps to encourage the penetration of renewable energy in the country. Starting with utility scale, I think a huge number of bids have come through central government agencies, as also by the state discoms, to encourage renewable energy and also to meet the obligation of renewable power. So there is a RPO obligation which each of the states have to meet. Of course, the full compliance has not happened by all the states, but there are some states who are very active and they have done much more than the mandatory requirement. So I think the government has been pushing and keeps on taking various policy initiatives, as well as a lot of regulatory changes keeps on happening for promoting renewable.
Coming up after the break is an interesting fireside chat with Daniel Mayfield, VP and CTO, GE Renewable Energy. And the topic is how to tackle climate emergency with technology and innovation. After an overwhelming response on day one of New Horizon presented by GE, our focus was renewable energy and cybersecurity. On day two, we were joined by the Minister of Environment and the GE Global CEO, Larry Culp.
Multi-billion-dollar footprint for us. When we think about GE and our purpose of building a world that works, both in terms of precision healthcare, the future of flight, let alone the energy transition, those are all global challenges